everyone. Welcome back to my Lua tutorial series for absolute beginners. In the last episode we left off, we talked about while loops in Lua. In this episode we're going to be talking about the second type of loops that are available to us in Lua, and that is of course the for loop. So for loops are a bit different than while loops in that while loops are usually used to repeat something an infinite amount of times. You don't have to. You can make a while loop repeat something only a few times, but for loops are generally used more often when we want to repeat some code only a couple of times, or if we want to iterate over something, which we will talk about a little bit more in a different episode when we introduce tables in Lua, and I will discuss how to use for loops in a little bit more detail there. So think of that as a kind of for loops part 2 episode as well. So this is for loops part 1. Alright, so let's just jump into it. So to make a for loop, we just say for, and then we create a variable. We'll say I. We'll give it an initial value of say 1, and then we'll go up until a certain value, and then we'll say do and end. In this case, I've chosen 10 as this value to go up to, but you can kind of choose whatever value you want, and that depends entirely on your program. So what this is saying is, it's basically saying the same thing as while I is less than 10, do whatever is here, and basically increment I. So this will automatically increment I for us. Or in other words, it'll increase the value of I by 1 each time that the loop does, each time the code gets executed, it goes back here and it checks, is I less than 10? And if it is, it goes back here, and then it goes back here, and so on and so forth until I is equal to 10, and this program is done and we have gotten out of this loop. Okay, so let's just put something here. Let's just print I is, and then I. So 2 dots and then I. Now let's hit Control S or Command S to save. We'll go into our terminal. Again, terminal, new terminal. And then we will say Lua space hello dot Lua, or whatever the name of your file here is. Then hit enter. And as you can see, it is printed out here. First I is 1, then I is 2, I is 3, and so on until I is 10. So this is basically an easier way kind of repeating code a certain limited amount of times. But what if we don't want I to increase only by 1? What if we want I to, say, increase by 2 or by 3? Well, in that case, what we can do here is we can just add another comma, and then we will add whatever we want I to increase by on each version, each iteration of the loop. So each time that it loops around, I will increase by something. In this case, if I set it to 2, and then hit Control S, and I go back here, and I do Lua hello.lua, as you can see, it'll print out I is 1 first, because we start I off at 1. Then we increment I by 2, so we go to I is 3, and then we increment I again, and we go to I is 5. I is still less than 10, so we increment again, and we say I is 7, because we add 2 to 5, which is 7, and then that's still less than 10, so we go again. We say 7 plus 2 is 9, and 9 is still less than 10, so we try it again, but if we go again, it goes to 11, and the loop kind of stops. So basically it does this while I is less than this value. So that's another way of making a for loop work. One final way that for loops can work in Lua is we can have a certain code that starts off I at a high value and it goes until I is at a low value, like let's say 1, and we subtract 1 from it each time, or whatever we want here. This doesn't need to be 1 again, this could be 5 or 3 or whatever. I'm going to put 1 here, and let's see what this does. And as you can see, we start off I at 10, and 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now another thing that we can do, again, is just set this to a different number, and then try this again. And now I will start off at 10, we can go to 8, 6, 4, and 2, and so on. And this is basically how for loops work in Lua. This is a very basic explanation. We will show you the more advanced uses of this in a bit of a later episode, but there are some very useful applications of this that involve something called a table in Lua, which you'll be hearing a lot about in future episodes. And tables are very important in Lua, and for loops can do a lot of cool stuff on tables, and so they are very useful, and we'll learn about them a little bit more later. So thank you for watching. Please leave a like if you liked the video. Make sure to subscribe if you're not yet subscribed. And yeah, I'll see you in the next episode. Goodbye.